The galaxy was on the edge of collapse. The war had been raging for years, and the enemy was winning. They had wiped out entire fleets, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. Worlds once filled with life were now desolate, and the hope of any species, any alliance, was slipping away. It seemed like no one could stop the endless wave of destruction. But then, out of nowhere, something strange happened. Deep in the vast reaches of space, an unexpected signal was picked up. It was faint at first, almost like a whisper lost in the cosmic winds. The alien forces who controlled the galaxy's fate didn't think much of it. They had seen signals before, many of them traps or false alarms. But this one felt different, as though it was calling to them. It wasn't from any known species or faction. It was a strange frequency, unlike anything they had encountered. At first, the commanders brushed it off, dismissing it as nothing more than a random anomaly. But as the days went on, the signal grew stronger. The higher-ups in the enemy command began to get nervous. The signal was not supposed to exist. It wasn't from a neighboring galaxy or a race they had ever encountered. It felt human, but that couldn't be right. Humanity had never been a threat. They had never been able to fight on the same scale as the galactic empires that now ruled the stars. How could a small, isolated species from a distant corner of the universe suddenly pose a threat? Yet, as the signal grew louder, something had to be done. The command sent out a fleet to investigate. It was their standard procedure: send a few ships, check the signal, and eliminate any threat before it had a chance to grow. They were confident this would be no different from the countless other investigations they had carried out. The fleet arrived at the coordinates, and the strange signal led them to a point in space that appeared empty. But then, just as they began to doubt their search, a dark shape emerged from the shadows of the cosmos. It was massive, far larger than anything they had ever seen. It was a ship, but it looked unlike any ship the alien forces had ever encountered. The human warship had appeared, almost as if out of nowhere, silently drifting toward them. At first, the enemy fleet hesitated. It was unlike anything in their records, and for a moment, they wondered if it was some kind of illusion. The ship was sleek and smooth, its surface shimmering in the cold light of distant stars. But it wasn't just its size or design that caught their attention. It was the complete absence of sound. Even though it was huge, it made no noise. There was no engine hum, no movement of metal. The warship simply hung there, silent and still, as if it were waiting for something. The alien fleet, now thoroughly confused, opened communication channels, trying to get a response. But no reply came. They tried again and again, sending commands, warnings, and threats. Still, no answer. The ship just floated, its weapons dormant, but its presence heavy in the air. Then, without warning, the ship activated. In an instant, a bright flash of light exploded from its side, and the lead alien ship was hit. The force of the blast sent shockwaves through space, rattling the enemy fleet. The ship didn't just fire once. It kept firing, one shot after another, each blast ripping through the alien ships with terrifying precision. The enemy fleet scrambled to respond, but nothing worked. Their weapons bounced off the surface of the human warship, as if it were made of some unbreakable material. The aliens couldn't understand what they were seeing. They had sent entire fleets to wipe out lesser species, to crush rebellions, but this was different. The human warship seemed unstoppable. It moved as if guided by some force no one could comprehend, outmaneuvering the enemy's ships with ease. They tried to retreat, but it was too late. The human ship pursued them relentlessly, never giving them a chance to escape. Inside the human warship, Captain Sarah Callahan stood at the helm, watching the battle unfold. Her crew was calm, focused, and ready. The warship was not just a ship. It was a masterpiece of human engineering, powered by a new energy source that was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The enemy had no idea what they were facing. They thought they could win the war with their superior numbers and technology. but they had no idea that the human race had kept its greatest weapon hidden. As the alien fleet began to fall apart, their commanders ordered a retreat. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. But the human warship wasn't finished. Captain Callahan knew this was only the beginning. The war had only just taken an unexpected turn. The galaxy would never be the same again. The enemy forces fled, their pride shattered, and the galaxy held its breath. No one knew where the human warship had come from or why it had appeared now. But one thing was certain. The fate of the war had just changed. And this was only the first move. The moment the alien fleet retreated, the galaxy was filled with whispers. The humans had struck a blow that was heard across the stars, a blow that no one had expected. The word spread quickly. The human warship was real, and it was far more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. News of the battle traveled faster than light, reaching every corner of the galaxy, and with it came a mix of fear, confusion, and curiosity. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? And how had they built such a powerful warship? The enemy commanders convened in an emergency meeting. They were rattled. For the first time in years, they were no longer confident. This warship, this human weapon, had done what no one else could. It had taken out their strongest ships with ease. They had never faced anything like it. The enemy was used to winning, used to being the ones in control. But now, they were beginning to question everything. As the alien fleet regrouped, they began to analyze the battle. Their ships were far more advanced than any human vessel. They had the numbers, the technology, the experience. But the human warship had something else, something they couldn't understand. The energy it used, the speed it moved with, the way it seemed to anticipate their every move. It was beyond their comprehension. They needed answers. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Callahan sat in her command center, surrounded by her crew. They had won the battle, but she knew this was just the beginning. The war was far from over. The enemy would be back, and they would come in greater numbers, with more advanced weapons. They would not forget the humiliating defeat they had just suffered. But Callahan was ready. She had known that the warship would change the fate of the galaxy, but even she hadn't expected such a quick response from the enemy. "Captain, we've detected another fleet," said her first officer, Lieutenant Grayson, his voice steady despite the tension. "They're coming for us. It's bigger than the last one." Callahan nodded. She wasn't surprised. "Prepare for battle," she ordered. "But keep a close eye on their movements. We'll use the element of surprise again." The crew of the human warship moved quickly, ready to face whatever came next. The warship wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol. A symbol of human resilience, of their ability to adapt, to fight against impossible odds. The aliens had underestimated them once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. As the alien fleet approached, they began to form a battle strategy, but they still didn't know what they were up against. Their ships moved in tight formation, each one ready to fire at the first sign of weakness. They had learned from the previous defeat and were determined to make sure they didn't lose again. But Callahan had a plan. The warship wasn't just about firepower. It was about using its advanced technology to outsmart the enemy. The human warship wasn't just a massive floating fortress. It was a living, breathing entity in space, capable of moving and adapting in ways the enemy couldn't anticipate. "On my mark," Callahan said, her voice cool and calm, as she watched the approaching enemy fleet. She knew this battle would be even harder than the last. But she also knew they had the upper hand. The enemy had no idea what they were about to face. At her command, the human warship moved. In a blink of an eye, it changed course, darting toward the enemy fleet at impossible speeds. The aliens, caught off guard by the sudden movement, fired their weapons, but they were too late. The human warship easily dodged the blasts, weaving in and out of the incoming fire. It wasn't just fast, it was unpredictable. The alien fleet scrambled to adjust, but the human warship was already on the offensive. With one quick strike, it disabled the lead ship, sending it spinning into deep space. The rest of the fleet hesitated, unsure of how to react. The human warship didn't stop. It kept moving, attacking with pinpoint precision, targeting the weak points of each alien ship. Panic began to spread through the alien fleet. They had faced powerful enemies before, but nothing like this. The human warship wasn't just a ship. It was a new type of weapon, one that could think, adapt, and strike with devastating force. The aliens tried to regroup, but it was too late. One by one, their ships fell, disabled or destroyed by the human warship's relentless assault. The battle seemed almost too easy, but Callahan knew better than to get complacent. She had seen enough of the galaxy's wars to understand that nothing was ever truly over. As the last of the enemy ships retreated, she allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. They had won again. But this time, she knew, it would make the enemy even more determined. They wouldn't stop until they had wiped out every trace of humanity. As the dust settled, Captain Callahan stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the stars. The war was far from over, but humanity had just proved it was a force to be reckoned with, and they would fight to the end. The enemy had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. The news of the defeat spread like wildfire. The enemy's top commanders were furious. Their fleet had been humiliated, their pride shattered. This time, they were not just dealing with another race to crush. They were facing something entirely different. The humans, with their mysterious warship, had turned the tide of the war in a matter of moments. The question on everyone's mind was, how? Back in their command center, the enemy's high-ranking officials debated their next move. They had lost face, lost ships, and most importantly, they had lost their confidence. The warship, which had emerged from nowhere, had proven to be far beyond anything they had expected. How had humanity created such a weapon? The alien forces had studied every known species, every advanced technology, and still they had nothing to compare. "We need to understand how the humans did this," one of the commanders said, slamming his fist on the table. "We can't afford to let this slip through our fingers. If they have more of these warships, it could mean the end of our empire." The council agreed. They needed answers. The humans had shown their strength, but the enemy was determined not to let this new threat slip by. They would do whatever it took to uncover the secrets of the human warship and destroy it. But there was a problem. No one knew how to get close to the human fleet. They had no idea where it had come from or where it was hiding. In the heart of the human warship, Captain Sarah Callahan stood in front of a massive screen displaying tactical data. The battle had ended, but the danger was far from over. The enemy was regrouping, preparing for another assault. And this time, they wouldn't make the same mistakes. Callahan turned to her officers. "We can't wait for them to come to us. We need to take the fight to them. Now that we've shown them our strength, they'll try to prepare, try to learn our weaknesses. But they won't have enough time. We'll hit them hard and fast." Lieutenant Grayson, her first officer, nodded. "We've received intel that the enemy is assembling a fleet in a nearby system. They're bringing everything they've got." Callahan didn't hesitate. "Then we'll hit them before they're ready. We'll strike fast, take out their command structure, and leave them scrambling." Her crew was ready. They had seen what the warship could do, and they had complete faith in their captain. The ship wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of humanity's strength. It was a reminder that they weren't just victims of this war. They were survivors, and they were willing to fight to the very end. The human warship powered up, its engines glowing brighter as it prepared to leave the safety of deep space. As it moved, its weapon systems hummed to life, and the crew's excitement mixed with nervous energy. They were about to do something no one had expected. They were about to strike again. Meanwhile, the alien fleet was in the process of positioning its forces. Their commanders believed they had learned from their previous mistakes. They would not be caught off guard again. They would encircle the human warship, trap it, and destroy it. It was a foolproof plan, or so they thought. As the human warship approached the enemy fleet's location, Callahan felt a sense of calm wash over her. She knew what she had to do. The battle would be brutal, but the humans had already proven they could win. And this time, they would have the element of surprise. When the human warship entered the enemy's detection range, it didn't attempt to hide. Instead, it charged forward, straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. The alien ships opened fire immediately, but the human warship's defensive systems activated instantly, blocking the incoming blasts with ease. Then, in an instant, the warship retaliated. A massive beam of energy shot from its main cannon, cutting through several enemy ships in a single strike. The aliens hadn't seen anything like it. Their shields were no match for the power behind the beam, and their ships were torn apart in a flash. The enemy fleet tried to regroup, but the human warship was too fast, too unpredictable. It darted between their ships, striking at their weak points with surgical precision. The aliens couldn't keep up. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, the human warship was already gone, moving to the next target. It was as if it could predict their moves before they made them. On the command deck, Callahan could see the chaos unfolding on her screens. The enemy was disorganized, and their response was slow. The humans were outmaneuvering them, just like they had before. But this time, Callahan knew the victory would be even sweeter. She gave the order to intensify their assault. Don't let them regroup. Keep the pressure on. We take out their command ship, and this battle is ours. As the human warship tore through the alien fleet, the enemy commanders scrambled to regroup. But it was too late. With one final strike, the human warship destroyed the alien command ship, throwing the entire fleet into disarray. The remaining ships, now leaderless, tried to flee, but the human warship didn't stop. It hunted them down, one by one, until nothing remained but scattered debris. The battle was over. The human warship had once again proven that it was unstoppable. Captain Callahan and her crew stood victorious, their hearts pounding with the thrill of the fight. But they knew it wasn't over. The enemy would return. They always did. But this time, humanity had sent a message. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. The enemy had learned a painful lesson, and humanity was just getting started. The enemy was in disarray. Their once proud fleet lay scattered across the battlefield, broken and battered, with their command structure utterly destroyed. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The human warship, a symbol of strength and resilience, had turned the tide of the war, and the galaxy could no longer ignore the rising force of mankind. Yet, even in the midst of victory, Captain Sarah Callahan knew that this war was far from over. The human warship had struck fear into the heart of the enemy, but they would not stop. They would regroup, adapt, and come back stronger than ever. She had seen it before. The worst thing humanity could do now was become complacent. The warship cruised through space, leaving behind the wreckage of the alien fleet. Callan stood on the bridge, staring out at the cold expanse of stars. Her crew had fought hard, and now they had earned a brief moment of peace. But she didn't feel relief. She felt the weight of the next battle pressing down on her shoulders. "Captain," Lieutenant Grayson spoke up, breaking her thoughts. "We've received a transmission from the enemy." Callahan's eyes narrowed. "What do they want?" "It's a surrender message," Grayson replied. "They're offering terms of peace." Callahan's gaze remained fixed on the stars. She knew this moment would come. The enemy, broken and humiliated, would offer peace to save face, to avoid further destruction. But peace was never as simple as it seemed. This war had gone on for too long, and the cost had been too great for any true reconciliation to be made so easily. "Are we listening to their terms?" Callahan asked, her voice steady. Grayson hesitated. "Not yet, Captain. The message is encrypted. It's possible that it's a trap." Callahan knew he was right. The enemy had proven time and time again that they would do anything to hold onto power. A surrender could be a trick to buy time, to rebuild, to strike when humanity was least expecting it. "Prepare for a full scan of the message," she ordered. "We'll respond when we're sure it's legitimate. Keep a close watch on their movements. If they try anything, we'll be ready." As the crew worked to decode the message, Callahan turned to her communications officer, Lieutenant Lara. "Do we have any news on our allies?" Lara shook her head. "We've sent out the signal, but no response yet. It's possible they've been cut off by the enemy's forces." Callahan exhaled sharply. The human warship might be the most powerful ship in the galaxy, but even it couldn't fight a war on multiple fronts alone. She needed the support of the other human fleets, the other colonies, the other survivors. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, and every alley counted. The hours passed slowly as the crew worked tirelessly to analyze the enemy's transmission. Finally, the encryption was broken, revealing the true nature of the message. It wasn't a peace offering, but a desperate plea for a ceasefire. The aliens were running out of resources, and their forces were on the brink of collapse. They wanted time to regroup, to repair their fleets, and to prepare for another assault. Callahan stood up, her hands clenched into fists. The enemy wanted to buy time, but humanity wasn't about to let them off the hook so easily. The battle might have been won, but the war was far from over. If they accepted this ceasefire, the enemy would only return stronger, more determined to crush humanity. "We can't allow this," Callahan said firmly. "The enemy's forces are weak, and they're desperate. If we let them regroup, they'll come back with everything they've got. We finish this now." She turned to her crew. "Prepare for another strike. We'll take the fight to their homeworld. We end this war once and for all." The crew looked at one another, their eyes filled with determination. They had fought together, bled together, and now they would finish what they had started. The alien forces may have had the numbers, but humanity had something far stronger, their will to survive. As the human warship powered up and began its journey toward the enemy's homeworld, Callahan reflected on how far humanity had come. They had been pushed to the brink of extinction, but now they were the ones driving the war forward. The alien fleets that once seemed invincible were now retreating in fear. The humans had proved they were a force to be reckoned with. The final battle was on the horizon, and this time it would be different. The enemy would no longer have the advantage. They had shown their cards, and now humanity knew exactly how to play their own. With the support of the other human colonies, the power of the human warship, and the will to fight, Captain Callahan knew that victory was within their grasp. The war was not over yet, but it was nearly finished. And when it was done, the galaxy would know that humanity had not only survived, they had conquered. As the warship hurtled toward its target, ready to unleash one final, decisive strike, Callahan looked out at the stars once more. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of a new power, and humanity would leave its mark on the universe. The fate of the war had already been sealed, and there was no going back. The human warship moved through the vast reaches of space with determination, its engines blazing as it sped toward the enemy's homeworld. The final confrontation was upon them, and Captain Sarah Callahan knew that this would be the end of the war. The aliens had underestimated humanity from the start, but now they were about to experience the full force of the human resolve. As they approached the enemy's homeworld, a dark, heavily fortified planet surrounded by countless defense systems, the tension on the bridge was palpable. The crew had been through countless battles, but this was different. This was the final battle, the one that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The enemy, despite their defeat after defeat, had held onto their pride and power for too long. Now, it was time to end it. "Captain, we're nearing the enemy's defenses," said Lieutenant Grayson, his voice calm but tense. "Their fleet is already mobilizing. They know we're coming." Callahan nodded, her gaze fixed on the approaching planet. The enemy knew they were outmatched. They had seen what the human warship could do. Yet they still fought on, unwilling to admit defeat, unwilling to let go of their power. The human warship had already taken down fleets, crushed their command ships, and destroyed their most advanced weapons. Now, they would face the full might of humanity. "Prepare the weapons," Callahan ordered. "We're not just going to break their fleet, we're going to wipe it off the map. All firepower on my mark." The crew moved swiftly, ensuring the ship was ready for the final push. The weapons systems hummed to life, and the targeting computers locked onto their targets with deadly accuracy. Callahan's heart pounded in her chest, but she remained calm, focused. She had been trained for this moment, and she knew what needed to be done. The warship moved into position, its silhouette dark against the starry background. The planet loomed ahead, surrounded by a massive fleet of alien ships. They had gathered everything they had left. This was their last stand. But Callahan wasn't intimidated. The humans had already turned the tide of the war, and now they would finish it once and for all. "Target their fleet," Callahan said. "All guns fire." The human warship unleashed a barrage of firepower, its weapons glowing as they tore through the alien ships with precision. The explosions lit up the dark expanse of space, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The aliens had no chance. Their ships crumbled under the intensity of the human warship's fire, their shields barely able to hold up against the relentless assault. But the enemy was desperate. They knew they were losing, and they fought with everything they had. The remaining ships surged forward, hoping to surround the human warship and launch a final strike. But Callahan was ready. She had studied their tactics, and she knew what they would do before they even tried. "Flank them," she ordered. "We'll hit them from the sides and disable their engines." The human warship shifted, moving like a shadow through the chaos of the battle. It darted between the enemy ships, its weapons cutting down anything in its path. The alien fleet, now scattered and disorganized, couldn't respond fast enough. The humans were too quick, too precise. One by one, the alien ships were destroyed or disabled, their firepower useless against the human warship's overwhelming might. The enemy's last line of defense, their flagship, emerged from the chaos. It was massive, far larger than the other ships, and heavily armored. But it was no match for the human warship. Callahan ordered all weapons to target the flagship, and with a single powerful strike, the human warship's main cannon obliterated it. The flagship exploded in a burst of light, its remains floating in the void of space. With the flagship gone, the enemy's resistance crumbled. The remaining ships, leaderless and broken, scattered in every direction. The battle was over. The war was over. "Captain, we've won," Grayson said, his voice filled with awe. "The enemy fleet has been destroyed. They're retreating." Callahan stood at the helm, looking at the wreckage of the alien fleet. For a moment, silence filled the bridge. The crew knew that the galaxy would be forever changed by what had just happened. Humanity had won. Against all odds, they had turned the tide of a war that had seemed unwinnable. But Callahan knew this victory was more than just a win on the battlefield. It was a victory for all of humanity, a testament to their strength, their resilience, and their ability to fight when no one thought they had a chance. The enemy had underestimated them, but now the galaxy knew better. As the human warship hovered above the alien homeworld, its weapons powered down, and its engines slowly came to rest, Callahan allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The war was over, but the journey was far from finished. There would be rebuilding, there would be diplomacy, and there would be new challenges on the horizon. But humanity had proven something important. They had proven that they would never back down. And as she looked out at the remains of the alien fleet, Captain Sarah Callahan knew one thing for certain. Humanity had altered the fate of the war, and now they would alter the fate of the galaxy itself.